The news has just been bombarded with explosive headlines. This Friday, Israel was once again on alert. Hezbollah fired at northern Israel, and air defenses were activated in Tehran. And Donald Trump escalated his rhetoric against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard in the Strait of Hormuz, issuing a shoot-to-kill order. This Friday, April 24, 2026, the Middle East enters another day of tension with a central point, the so-called truce. It exists on paper. On the ground, the fire continues to smolder beneath the ashes. What we see now is a crisis spread across three fronts. Israel, pressured by Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran on high alert within its own capital, and the United States tightening its maritime squeeze on vessels linked to Tehran. I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but right now, you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the highest journalistic quality ever seen and a standard of credibility. Milson Alves. The situation gained momentum after Trump announced the extension of the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon for another 3 weeks. The measure was supposed to create room for negotiations and reduce pressure on the border. But almost at the same time, Hezbollah resumed launching rockets at northern Israel, claiming it was in response to alleged Israeli violations. This information appears in recent reports indicating that the ceasefire has been extended but remains fragile, with clashes in southern Lebanon and attacks on Israeli areas. The most sensitive point is that Hezbollah does not act alone on the regional stage. The group is politically and militarily supported by the Iranian regime. And this connection turns every rocket launched from Lebanon into part of a broader pressure campaign against Israel and the United States. The truce, in this context, did not become peace. It became an unstable pause used by each side to measure strength, test limits, and buy time. And that's where the clash lies. While Washington talks about negotiation, Tehran and its allies keep the region under constant threat. In northern Israel, sirens and defense systems were activated again after new attacks attributed to Hezbollah. The group claimed to have launched rockets in response to Israeli attacks in southern Lebanon. However, the interpretation is different. Hezbollah would be trying to use the ceasefire as a shield, attacking when it can and accusing when it gets a response. This dynamic makes it clear that the border between Israel and Lebanon remains explosive, even with diplomacy trying to sell an image of control. At the same time, in Iran, on the night of Thursday, April 23rd, there were reports of air defenses being activated in Tehran. And the Iranian agency MER reported that defense systems were heard, engaging targets considered hostile in different areas of the capital. Other reports mentioned small drones and defensive fire in the western part of the city. Israel denied carrying out attacks at that time, but the main fact remains. The Iranian capital went on alert, and this shows a nervous, suspicious regime under pressure both internally and externally. This detail carries a lot of weight. Tehran is the center, the political heart of the regime, when air defenses are activated in the capital. Even if Iran later tries to treat it as a test or a response to small drones, the message that remains is one of vulnerability. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which for years tried to sell the image of absolute strength, now has to deal with mysterious drones. Reported blackouts, internal tension, and fear of new attacks. It's not just a military problem, it's a psychological problem for the regime. This is the point that changes the stakes of the crisis. Hormuz is not just any route, it's a vital artery for the world's energy supply. When Iran threatens ships, lays mines, or uses small boats to pressure maritime traffic. It's not just threatening Israel or the United States, it's threatening trade, supply, maritime insurance, energy prices, and the stability of several nations at the same time. That's why Trump's response was tough. The order doesn't change. The Iranian people are targeting the coercive machine of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, and that's exactly why the tension is rising. Iran tries to respond with pressure in the Strait of Hormuz by seizing cargo ships and supporting armed groups. The United States responds with blockades, inspections, seizures, and direct military orders. Israel, in turn, puts its forces on alert and warns that it may strike Iran again if it gets the green light from Washington. The Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz stated that Israel is prepared to resume the war against Iran. that the Israel Defense Forces are ready for defense and attack, and that the targets have already been marked. This statement by Katz is a game changer. It shows that Israel does not see the ceasefire as the end of the conflict, but as a pause. And during this pause, the targets would be studied, the defense reinforced, and the attack capability preserved for the Israeli government. As long as the Iranian regime continues to support Hezbollah, threaten maritime routes, and maintain active military structures, the war could return at any moment. On the American side, Trump tries to combine military pressure and negotiation. He says he's in no hurry to make a bad deal with Iran. This stance has a clear purpose: to force Tehran to choose between giving in on key points or facing a tougher siege. The problem for the Iranian regime is that its room to maneuver is getting smaller. If it agrees to negotiate, it appears weak to its more radical base. If it refuses to negotiate, it increases the risk of new attacks and greater economic isolation. In Lebanon, Hezbollah tries to maintain its narrative of resistance, but the reality on the ground shows something else. Each attack against Israel opens the door for a heavier response and makes it harder to maintain the ceasefire. The group is betting on pressure, but it also imposes a high cost on Lebanon. The Lebanese population pays the price for an armed structure that responds more to the interests of Tehran than to the needs of Lebanon itself. In Israel, the situation is one of constant vigilance. The north of the country lives under the threat of rockets, drones, and attacks coming from the other side of the border. Even when interceptions prevent deaths, the impact is profound. Schools close, families run to shelters, daily life in cities is disrupted, and security forces remain on full alert. Modern warfare doesn't happen only when a missile hits its target. It also happens when millions of people are forced to live under sirens, uncertainty, and calculated fear. For the Iranian regime, the situation is dangerous because the crisis has spread on multiple levels at sea. There is blockade and inspection. In Lebanon, Hezbollah risks provoking a greater Israeli response. In Tehran, air defenses have been activated. In diplomacy, Trump shows no hurry, and in the military sphere, Israel says its targets are marked. It's a heavy burden for a regime that tries to appear united but faces constant pressure. In the end, this Friday shows a Middle East that is trapped and everyone on alert. Iran tries to intimidate at sea and support armed terrorist allies. The United States tightens the siege with a direct order to shoot to kill and the ceasefire. A ceasefire that was supposed to calm the region. It increasingly looks like a tense pause before the next decision. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the community. Milson Alves.